welcome to episode 2 of the Grip It and Rip It pod. Today we're talking about why brands plateau. So, how's it going, Colin?
It's going.
Speaking of, some of the main reasons why DTC brands plateau, obviously there's a lot of different reasons. What would be some of the ones that you've seen most recently with some of the brands that we've worked with and looked into their accounts?
Well, not knowing their memes, I think that's a big one.
Yeah.
Gotta know their memes, or they're gonna have a hard cap on how aggressively you can scale. So I think plateaus come in different forms, and there's multiple plateaus that brands reach, and different reasons why they do reach those. I think, and again, like depending on scale, but a few of them are not launching new products, not knowing their numbers, and then kind of like related to that would be getting trapped in like the squeezing the sponge sort of scenario. So I think, hitting on those briefly, and then, I'm sure we'll dig into them later, not launching new products. And I think this is a huge one because each each new product that you launch gives you access to new customers. It gives you an opportunity to advertise to new customers that you hadn't previously been advertising to. It can help increase your lifetime value from cross-selling into products that your current customers want but you did not previously offer. Not launching new products is a common challenge, especially for brands that maybe see great success with one individual SKU and then kind of get trapped in a situation where once they max out that SKU, that's it, right? And, we can look at a lot of the sort of like successful, well-known e-com brands who have done this. So like Ridge, kind of like an easy example, originally like just wallets, but have jewelry, have luggage, like have other various sort of everyday carry accessories that they do. Portland Leather Goods, like they're well known for launching like a new SKU a week or something like that. I mean, they launch like tons and tons and tons and tons of new SKUs. So, that's another example as well. You don't have to be at that scale to benefit from launching new products, especially because you can frequently launch new products without a ton of money, ton of inventory to kind of see how it goes. But, I think launching new products is a key to scaling, especially if your brand has started to stall.
Yeah, that makes sense. And like you said, you can try it at a small scale, see what happens. Still, might be a little bit of a lift for brands, especially compared to knowing their own numbers, which is like literally just figure it out in a spreadsheet.
Yeah, I mean, not knowing numbers, it causes plateaus for sure, but I think it's probably the biggest challenge that most brands face, especially in the like sub 20 million revenue range, is just like not knowing their numbers, right? Like, what's your contribution margin? I don't know. Like, what's your break even acquisition MER, right? Don't know, right? And so if you don't know what your numbers are, like granularly at the business level numbers, right? It will be very hard to scale with confidence, and you'll end up overshooting on what you need, and that's going to cause plateaus to happen earlier, right? Like if you think that you need a 4x return in order to break even and you actually only need a 2x, right? Like you're going to plateau significantly earlier and like harder because you're shooting for that 4x because you don't know your numbers that well.
Yeah, and it's a lot more common than you would think it is, but it happens quite a bit. What about the sponge? What's up with the big squeeze? How do people get trapped squeezing the sponge?
This kind of ties into both like not knowing their numbers and not launching new products. And that is where brands reach a point where they've focused so much on like purchase focused ads on Meta primarily, where you've hit the whole size of that audience. You've wrung the sponge dry of all of the people who are in market, ready to buy in kind of a short term time window. And there's just not more that you can really squeeze out of it. And when that's the case, right, like you're going to plateau. It's a very common place for brands to get trapped. The scale for this one does vary like pretty dramatically based on, total addressable market, but you can see some brands start to plateau for this in, let's say, like the 30 to 50 million dollar range. Sometimes it's sooner, sometimes it's later, but yeah, this is also a pretty common one as well.
So I think this is also a good segue to start talking about incrementality because my understanding is that when they completely squeeze the sponge, there's nothing left in the sponge, you need to invest in top of the funnel channels where there's not as much direct attribution. So do you think that a lack of an understanding in terms of how incrementality works and how it translates to different brands is a big cause of them hitting growth plateaus?
Yeah, absolutely. Fancy we have a great segue on this one. But yeah, I mean, understanding how incremental advertising channels are and then being able to measure channels that don't have great deterministic measurement is critical to getting to that next level, right? And this is, more sort of like we'll call it top of the funnel, and it doesn't have to be super top of the funnel, but things like YouTube, for example, which are notoriously hard to measure because more than 50% of watch time on YouTube happens on television, right? People are not going to be generally scanning your QR code on their television and then going and making a purchase right away. This can be higher up the funnel activities on Meta, right? Like optimizing for video views or reach, things like that, where again your click based measurement is going to look terrible, but it's actually contributing a lot and it is filling that funnel. It is bringing in net new visitors to the brand. It is pushing people in market, etc. And if you're not able to measure that, right, and the way you measure that is generally with holdout tests. You can do MMM as well. You're going to plateau and you're not going to know where to go. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the Google Ads platform is the perfect example for this because, like as we were saying, YouTube, people, a little bit iffy on investing there because it's hard to measure attribution. They might just be looking at in-platform stuff. And then on the other side, you have Google brand search, which is kind of the opposite, where there's high numbers in the platform. It seems like it's doing a lot, but without actually running some kind of test, people may not realize that it's actually contributing a lot less than they realize, right?
Yeah, I mean that's definitely the other side of the coin, right? Some stuff is hard to measure and is highly incremental, and then some stuff is very easy to measure and is not incremental at all. Brand search obviously being one of those where generally it's not very incremental. So it could be like a 10x or 20x ROAS in platform, and you're like, oh, this looks great, is driving all of these sales, but you run a holdout test and all of those sales would have happened anyway, even if you weren't running the brand search. So yeah, that's kind of the flip side of it for sure.
And bringing it back a little bit to people understanding their higher level business numbers, it seems like sometimes if you don't know the numbers, really well and how it translates to what needs to happen in platform, brands either scale too quickly and it's not sustainable and they need to scale back, or they don't scale as fast as they should, and that's costing them, like the ability to scale faster at the expense of their competitors in the near term. How often do you see that kind of scenario?
So this is a very common scenario, right? Um, and I would say that the vast majority of brands don't know their numbers, even into the like brands that are like upwards of 50 million. You'll see it, and they don't really know their numbers. And I would say that like I think the scaling more aggressively is the less common problem where people think they're making money and are scaling at a loss. I think that's less common than brands who are under investing in growth because they think they need a higher return than they actually do, and then are materially limiting their upside, right? Because I think there's something that's very important to remember, which is that the relationship between, return on ad spend and ad spend itself is not linear. And so what I mean by that is that if you are running it at 2x and you drop your efficiency target to a 1.8, like that does not mean you're going to get a 10% increase in overall ad spend, right? Like you could get a 100% increase, you could get a 200% increase, right? The relationship is not a linear relationship, and if you don't know your numbers like intimately, right, then you are not going to be able to push your targets down to a point where you're unlocking more scale. And more scale comes with tons of benefits, right? Like you're generally going to see improvements in like OpEx as a percentage of your revenue. You're going to get improvement in COGS generally, right? Because you're going to be ordering more products and you'll get benefits there. Scale like you're more stable as well. Like if you're, doing 100 million a year in revenue, right? And you're spending, most of your ad spend on Meta, your account is going to be more stable than if you're doing like 20 million. And that just, the law of large numbers. So getting to that scale should be a priority for brands, and you need to know exactly what you need to get in order to be able to do that.
Switching gears a little bit to give the brands, a break for a minute if you haven't ran your numbers, so we stop kind of like hammering on that and making them feel bad. As far as Meta, I think something that we also talk about relatively frequently is that it seems like a lot of brands don't understand that you need a system for creating hypotheses, running creating creative around that, running those tests, and a lot of brands just kind of throw creative out there and just hope that something happens.
So I do actually think that creative and creative testing is a big part of getting through plateaus for brands. And frequently brands will find a few winning creatives or a few winning angles that work and then kind of ride those as long as they can, but there's a certain cap to that. And new creative that is like different angles and targeting different people, right? All of that is very important. And in order to really start to unlock that, it requires a system to do, right? Like you can't just keep spinning out iterations of like what's already worked and hope that it's going to unlock additional scale. And formalizing a system for ideating on creative, analyzing creative that you do have, launching creative, right? Like all of that is critical to getting more assets out, but more assets out that are more likely to get spend, and increase the sort of ceiling of the spend that you can have, right? Because if you think about your ad spend in the account, right? Like there is a certain amount of ad spend that you can have when you're at your target. And if you're launching new creative that is very similar and targets the same people, it's not going to increase the ceiling of spend that you have. It's just going to cannibalize spend from other ads, and your ceiling's going to still stay the same. What you need is creative that either performs materially better or hits a different angle, which allows you to untap a new audience, right? Like that's what's going to raise your ceiling of spend versus just kind of like, oh, this is like a slightly different iteration on something that we already have, and it's just going to like cannibalize spend from what you already have.
Yeah, and I mean, especially in Andromeda context, now that everything's kind of shifted to Andromeda, so the relative importance of the creative is greater than before, and now it seems like kind of like ironically, the creative is your audience targeting in a sense.
Yeah, and to be fair, I mean, your creative being your targeting has been true for years, but it's even more true now than it was. And, I'll say, like, Andromeda is not new, right? It's been out for almost a year at this point. I guess, like, fully rolled out for maybe, like, the last 6 months or so. So it's definitely not new, but brands who have not taken advantage of more varied and diverse creative and really thinking about how creative performs in this environment have definitely started to see performance tail off, because they haven't been sort of embracing the new way of doing things.
Shifting gears to discounts and chronic discounting, this seems like something that is easy to fall into and hard to get out of. So, seen this a few times where brands will start running discounts because they get boost in sales, and and we've talked about this before. And I know that you've likened it to like a drug user. So like the first time it feels so good, and then each time after the high isn't the same, but you need it to keep going. And then when you stop discounting, sales kind of plummet. I think that's a really good analogy. So what is your advice for brands regarding avoiding that, but still taking advantage of discounting?
Just avoid it, right? Like,
But it is kind of a slippery slope though, right? Because obviously Black Friday, Cyber Monday, certain holidays, you should be running some discounts. And to continue with the analogy, like, oh, the Christmas party, I'll have a beer. It's kind of like there are occasions where, it's tempting to do that, but you don't want to be doing it for, like where do you draw the line between doing it on certain occasions, but like maybe not like, every single holiday that's on the calendar, because now like every single day can be a holiday if you want it to be.
yeah, well, I mean, like, I don't think there's a hard and fast rule, and I think it also varies based on vertical, but you can see the diminishing returns of running aggressive promotions, and you start training your customers to never buy unless there's a discount, and that's something that you can feel, right? Like you can start to see non discount performance weaken, and I'm not talking it just like right after a promotion, because that is what you would expect, right? Sales get pulled forward. So promotions essentially do two things. One, they convert people that weren't going to convert at full price, right? And some subset of people that buy during a promo period are those people. And then the other part is people that were going to buy anyway, but are now buying during the promo because they're going to save money, right? And that latter group, ideally you want that group to be a smaller percentage than the new people. Because if not, then you're just giving margin away, right? But those people who are going to buy anyway, it probably wasn't going to be right then. So Black Friday, Cyber Monday is a great example, right? You're definitely getting new people who are just waiting for the discounts to buy and they weren't going to buy, and the discounts are pushing them over the edge. But you're also getting people who probably would have bought in like December or January, and those sales have been pulled forward, and so you're always going to see like a drop after. Now the challenge is like if you run like, oh, we saw a drop, let's discount again, and you're like, okay, well, it bumped a little bit, and then it drops again more because again you pulled stuff forward, and then you're like, all right, run a discount again, right? That's when you start running into the trap. I mean, you do have to get out of that lull where you pulled those sales forward and just kind of expect that you've squeezed the sponge and you need to kind of chill for a little bit. But as far as like cadence is concerned, I mean, I do think it's better to be more conservative in terms of how frequently you run promotions, because you don't want people to like be trained to expect them. That's when you run into like being like Joseph A. Bank,
Yeah.
where buy one suit get six free, right? And like no one's ever gonna pay full price, like because there's always a sale.
Feel bad for their sponge. Their sponge is definitely bone dry at this point. So switching gears to something else is CRO. So I'm kind of the CRO guy, so I talk about this relatively regularly to bring it up yet again. In, in my opinion, I think a lot of brands sleep on CRO because it's easy to not really think about. And so I've seen a lot of examples where, for example, take Meta brands. Maybe they even have a good system for testing creative, testing a ton of different creative, trying different messaging, trying this, that, whatever. Do that for a long period of time, invest heavily in that, and they're running all the traffic to the same landing page with spider webs on it from 3 years ago. Maybe it's not even a landing page, maybe it's the home page, maybe it's the PDP. So they're running all these tests, spending all this money for a very small increase in performance. And if you haven't done any CRO at all, there's typically some low-hanging fruit where you can see a pretty big increase in performance. So what are your thoughts on that?
So, yes, I do think it is very common for brands to neglect the post click experience. And that's crazy because you're investing all of these ad dollars to get those clicks. And then if you're sending them to a site or a page that is not a focus of ongoing improvement, you're kind of just wasting money, right? And it's not even looking at conversion rates, although like that's part of it, right? It's more not necessarily complex, but like more nuanced metrics like revenue per session, right? And that's a big one that we look at when we're looking around optimizing page performance is like, what's the revenue per session? How can we get the revenue per session up, right? Part of that is definitely conversion rates, right? Like if all things are equal and you increase your conversion rate, your revenue per session is going to go up. And then trying to maximize the delta between revenue per session and cost per session. And that's generally going to be right, like your cost per click. So yeah, I mean, I think it's something that is definitely less focused on than it should be. And I think a lot of people just think, oh, it's like just spinning up a landing page or something like that. But there's a lot more that goes into it, and it is a big untapped opportunity for many brands who are just kind of like, they got their Shopify theme, they send people to their PDP or their collection page, and that's it.
So that almost makes me think we should start a CRO company that can spin up landing pages for people. Maybe give it some superhero branding or something. So
So I hear
pop out
like
pages,
maybe call it like Pow Pow pages.
yeah, maybe call it like popoutpages.com or something. I don't know. Just an idea.
I like it. Good idea.
Um, what would you say to a brand owner who's achieved a lot of success? They've gotten this far by doing things their own way, and they're apprehensive about bringing someone on who can help take some of the responsibility and bring outside perspectives. But their concern is that they've done everything their own way to get this far, and they're worried that someone else might derail that success.
Growth requires growth of people too, right? And at a certain point, you just can't do more work as an individual, and you need other people to come in and do work to help level you up. You also start running into situations where you don't have the skills to do things, and so it can be enticing to continue to rely on yourself, but you're going to limit your growth opportunities when you do that, right? And you can be, there's numerous ways to kind of like bring additional people in. That can be hiring full time team members in house. That can be outsourcing specific things to agency partners, right? Whether that's creative media buying, like email marketing, whatever, right? Outsourcing it to people who specialize in that sort of work. And, that allows you to then focus on the things that you should be focusing on as the owner of the brand, which, is probably not like making Facebook ad creative. Like, that's probably not your most impactful usage of time. Unless you're an absolutely outrageously good content creator, right? And then maybe it is. But generally speaking, that's probably not it.
So if we were to sum up everything that we've talked about into one kind of short and sweet package, what would your advice be to brands that are stuck at the plateau?
So if you're a brand and you're stuck at a revenue plateau and you're struggling to break through it, and there's a few things that you should do, and I think a reasonable order. And the first one is getting super detailed about your numbers, right? And knowing all of your numbers, and like, are you actually at a plateau, or does it just look like a plateau because you're not good at measuring? And when you get more accuracy in your numbers, you can actually spend more and grow and see improvement, right? So I think knowing your numbers is really the first step. Once you do that, I think you should also be looking at product expansion if you haven't done it recently or haven't done it at all. And that can generally be done pretty cheaply. I mean, obviously it's vertical dependent, but single digit thousands to low tens of thousands of dollars to get something new launched, right? And that opens up all kinds of additional opportunities. And then, great measurement, right? Start really measuring the incrementality of various advertising efforts. And this is primarily important when you do have multiple channels going on, or have actually reached a plateau and need to start filling your funnel with more top of funnel things like YouTube. Absolutely critical to reaching the next level, because a lot of this stuff doesn't look like it's working even though it is. And if you don't think it's working, you're not going to keep investing in it, and that's going to keep you where you are and not take you where you want to go.
I think that's all amazing advice, and I think this is a wrap for episode 2.